welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're anything like me, you've probably felt like your weekends somehow leave you just as exhausted as your actual work week. Well, today, we are looking at the ancient biblical concept of rest. And trust me, the rigorous original meaning of this word is going to completely dismantle how you view it. You're going to want to pay close attention to this one.
Okay, so what does rest actually mean in the Bible? Let's just dive right in. If your brain immediately goes to lounging in a hammock, maybe taking a Sunday nap, or some modern form of self-care, you are kind of missing the point entirely. When we actually dig into the source texts, the biblical definition of rest is so much bigger. It's incredibly political and honestly way more demanding than our contemporary idea of just catching our breath.
And this perfectly illustrates the stark contrast we're talking about, modern rest versus Old Testament rest. Today, we tend to view rest as passivity, right? Just escaping the daily grind. But in the ancient texts, rest is an incredibly active state. It's all about cosmic stability, ordered rule, and absolute freedom from coercive tyranny. It's an ordered life under divine governance. So, to really unpack this, we're going on a deliberate journey right through Israel's history to track the evolution, the testing, and the ultimate hope of true biblical rest. We're going to hit 6 key areas: redefining rest, cosmic order and Sabbath, Joshua and the chaos war, the collapse of rest, false peace and exile, and finally, rebuilding true rest.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, redefining rest, going way beyond leisure and naps. Because to understand the theology, we really have to get a grip on the vocabulary first.
Now, what is super fascinating here is that the foundational Hebrew words the text uses, Shabbat and Nuach, they don't inherently mean relaxation. Not at all. Shabbat literally means to cease or desist from a given activity, just stopping. And Nuach implies settling down and finding stability after chaos has been subdued. So it's not about kicking your feet up. It's about stopping oppressive labor and settling into a genuinely secure, stable condition. So the crucial point to take away here, biblical rest is a state of ordered life produced by the removal of a threat. It is not just a psychological feeling of calm. We're talking about real cosmic order, political freedom from pharaoh-like systems, an economy that literally never lets you stop working. It's geographical security, and above all else, the absolute stabilizing reality of divine presence.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, cosmic order and Sabbath, or reigning over chaos. Because to really grasp this concept, we have to rewind all the way back to the very beginning, creation and the Exodus.
See, in the ancient world, a deity rests after subduing chaos and finally taking up their throne. God doesn't rest on the 7th day because he's exhausted. No, he rests because creation is finally ordered, it's secure, and it's fit for life. And when the Sabbath is given to Israel later on, it mirrors this exact thing. Sabbath isn't just taking a day off, it is a profound political and theological refusal to be governed by the chaotic, slave-driving systems of anti-rest. It's Israel boldly declaring that Pharaoh's coercive economy does not own their time. And we see this beautifully in God's promise to Moses in Exodus 33, "My presence will go with you and I will give you rest." Remember, Israel had just rebelled, and that wilderness they were wandering in, that was a space of total anti-rest. Rest here isn't just geography, and it's not just the absence of enemies. It is the stable condition of life that is made possible entirely by God's presence. Moving on to Section 3, Joshua and the Chaos War, and establishing the inheritance. This is where the idea of rest literally hits the battlefield, and honestly, it forces a really crucial theological distinction. The book of Joshua captures this wild paradox. On one hand, God decisively achieves what we can call conquest rest by subduing hostile powers and breaking enemy coalitions. He creates a safe space. But on the other hand, Israel has to fight a war of faithfulness to actually maintain it. They have to actively keep chaos from re-entering by totally rejecting idolatry. So God secures the rest, but Israel has to actively maintain that order.
And tracking this timeline, you can clearly see the historical evolution of rest. It starts as this grand cosmic reality at creation, moves to freedom in the Exodus, hits the battlefield with Joshua, gets consolidated into a kingdom and a temple, and eventually, tragically, ends in the decreation of exile. It was a fragile state that Israel was tasked to maintain.
So what exactly happens when they fail to maintain that faithfulness? That's Section 4, the collapse of rest, and the warning of Judges.
If you map out the tragic cycle in the book of Judges, it becomes painfully obvious. When Israel abandons Yahweh and slips into idolatry, rest immediately collapses back into oppression. They break the covenant, they get oppressed by enemies, which, again, is the ultimate anti-rest. Then they cry out, God delivers them, and they get this temporary rest. But then, they just do it all over again. It absolutely proves that rest is never guaranteed just by geography alone.
There's this famous line from Judges, "Everyone did what was right in his own eyes." Now, today we might hear that and think, oh, personal freedom. But in this context, it's the exact opposite of an ordered life under God. When authority and worship fragment and everyone just does whatever they want, true rest is destroyed from the inside out. It essentially just recreates the chaos of Egypt. Decentralized moral authority inevitably leads to a fractured, enslaved society.
Which leads right into Section 5, False Peace and Exile, and the Prophet's Warning. This is the era of the kings and prophets, where rest becomes institutionalized, but man, does it get deeply corrupted.
You've got prophets, like Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Amos, aggressively attacking this counterfeit rest. The people had this massive temple and started thinking they were permanently safe. They had temple confidence without actual obedience. They'd use this peace rhetoric to mask horrific injustice. The prophets were screaming, you cannot have true stability while exploiting the vulnerable. Rest built on the backs of the poor isn't rest at all. It's literally just oppression wearing a peaceful mask.
And Psalm 95 serves as this massive canonical alarm bell. Today, if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. The terrifying takeaway here is that rest is always available today, but it's also endangered today. You could be physically standing right in the middle of the promised land and still completely forfeit rest because of a hard, rebellious heart.
Ultimately, this internal rot leads directly to exile. And Ezekiel shows us that exile isn't just geopolitical bad luck, it is the ultimate anti-rest. It's the terrifying collapse of their ordered covenant space, a literal return to decreation conditions. Because they brought internal chaos into the land through idolatry and injustice, God simply allowed the external chaos to overtake them.
But thankfully, the story doesn't end in the ashes. Section 6, Rebuilding True Rest, and the Prophetic Hope. The old systems clearly failed, so God promises a permanent fix.
Prophets like Ezekiel and Isaiah show us that durable, lasting rest requires a complete new creation act. Merely returning to the land wouldn't be enough. They'd just repeat the cycle. True restoration requires cleansing from defilement, a completely new heart and new spirit, restored covenant loyalty, and the return of God's holy presence to sustain a genuinely just society. The people themselves need an internal transformation to actually live in harmony with God's order.
So to sum this whole thing up, Old Testament rest isn't a hammock, it's a throne. It is ordered life under divine governance. It is not a vacation from reality, it's the proper ordering of reality. It's the beautiful, stabilized condition of life, the security, peace, and justice that overflows when a people totally submit their lives to their Creator, completely free from the tyranny of chaos.
So I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. What order or allegiance is currently governing your life right now? And is it producing true cosmic rest, or just an exhausting counterfeit? Are you living under the frantic tyranny of your own efforts, or have you surrendered to the divine governance that actually produces a settled soul? Give that some thought today. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.